Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. We're doing the 9th and final Autumn 2019 Analogues update for this first video on your Sunday morning. And yes, I did say 9th and final Autumn Analogues update. More about that in a moment. So we're going to be looking at England and Wales July precipitation for this one. And we've got plenty of interesting analogues to show you. Comes after, of course, last week's July CT analogues. So that will be what we're going to talk about very shortly. Just to say that the second video up today will be the penultimate GWV Sunday roundup. So I've only got one more of those to do after today. The reason being we're getting very close to winter updates now. We tend to rest the Sunday roundups in favour of winter updates because they'll be covering the same ground. So there's only today and next week's Sunday roundup to go. And coming up this afternoon, we're going to have the E&W Meteo France and DWD seasonal model update. That will be with you later on this afternoon. Now, back to the autumn update. So, as I say, this is the 9th and final Autumn 2019 Analogues update. We was hoping to be able to bring you a 10th and final update next Sunday. We're not going to be able to bring you that update, I'm afraid, because it's going to take us a couple of weeks to get the autumn forecast again, purely because of how busy we are with everything else that's going on at the moment. So, to be able to really get the forecast together for you for Saturday the 31st of August, we're going to have to take next week off from the autumn analogues. So we won't be able to do autumn analogues next week. We will, however, next weekend have the third and final autumn 2019 seasonal model roundup. And this day next week, we're going to bring back Solar Sunday. So remember, at the beginning of the month, we had to cancel Solar Sunday. A few people have asked whether it was possible for us to get it in. I do think it would be possible for us to get it in. But as it turns out, we're going to bring you Solar Sunday next week rather than a 10th Autumn Analogues update. So that's going to be quite an interesting watch, I think. And, of course, the autumn forecast is going to be released for you on Saturday, the 31st of August. Right, so it's going to be quite a long video, this. If you can't watch it all in one go, but it will be placed on the autumn updates and forecast page later on today, probably later this evening, around 7, 8 o'clock. There'll be a written summary that goes with it as well, so you'll be able to watch the video on demand, have a read of written summary on the autumn updates page sometime this evening. Big thank you to Analogues Guru James Ackrill, as always, for getting our analogues together for us. And get yourself a cup of chair, a cup of tea, and a few biscuits. We'll be here for a little while. And I think, without anything further to say, we'll get on with it. So, we're going to start off by talking about July precipitation. This series of analogues, this last series of analogues, is going to be based on July England and Wales precipitation. So, this is from the climate averages page at the UK Met Office. It's showing UK precipitation for July 2019 as a percentage of average. You see, generally for the central and northern parts of the country, it was quite a wet month going through, particularly the North Midlands and going up into northern England, into Scotland, very wet month there. Whereas further south and southwest, we actually come out with a dry month, especially so for Wales and southwestern parts of England. July 2019 has an England and Wales precipitation of 72.2 millimetres, and so what we've done with our analogues for this series of analogues is we've looked at the 20 closest Julys to July 2019. So some of these Julys could be a little bit above, some of these Julys could be a little bit below the rainfall total of July 2019, but overall they should be reasonably close. These are the 20 closest that we can find. And of course, then we're looking at the autumns that follow them. So our first July that is within the 20 closest to July 2019 in terms of England and Wales precipitation is 1857. This is how the autumn of 1857 is looking. It has above average heights sitting to the north of the country, and it has below average heights to our west-southwest. Therefore, we're bringing in probably quite warmish easterly winds initially. Remember, autumn's a transitional season, so early on, easterly winds will be quite warm. Late on, easterlies will be pretty cold. Overall, a fairly dry autumn, that one I would have thought, because the Atlantic looks pretty blocked off. Then we have our next autumn following July. England and Wales precipitation very close to July 2019, and it's 1862. So the autumn of 1862 again has a Scandinavian high, has above average heights towards Scandinavia, below average heights to the southwest. Again, you'd be favouring bringing in easterly winds, so reasonably dry autumn again. The jet stream and the Atlantic being blocked off, low pressures being forced southward, so it's a fairly dry autumn signal, I would have thought, and probably quite mild as well. Late on, of course, those easterlies will be going a lot colder. The next autumn is 1866. This one, again, with below average heights coming in off the Atlantic into the UK and into central parts of Europe as well. And we find that jet stream doing something like that. So this is a little bit more unsettled. There's a bit of high pressure up to the north, but this is more of a westerly type autumn. Probably a mild autumn, though, because, again, the flow is pretty flat and westerly. So I don't think there's any problems with temperatures in this autumn, but it is quite unsettled. Got a little bit of a tickle in my throat tonight, so just hoping the voice is going to hold out. Our next autumn is 1892. This one looks a lot more unsettled. The autumn of 1892 has a deep area of below average heights over to the south of the country. Some above average heights are up to the north and also to the east. Looks like we're bringing in much more of a west-southwesterly here, despite the above average heights that we've got to our east and northwest. Overall, I think that could be a much wetter autumn signal in 1892. Maybe late on, hints of some cold weather too. That's quite a big area of high pressure that's centred around Green. So by November, that could be bringing some colder conditions, I would have thought. But the main thing about that autumn, very unsettled. The next autumn is 1901. Again, we are following the 20 closest Julys in terms of England and Wales precipitation to July 2019, with an England and Wales precipitation of 72.2. This one has more of an anticyclonic signal, with high pressure sitting up to the north and low pressure down to our south, and we will be bringing in more of an easterly type wind with that one. So a rather drier autumn, I would have thought, in 1901. The Atlantic's blocked off and the jet stream is being moved southwards. Again, probably a fairly warmish signal early on. If those easterlies were to carry on into the latter part of the autumn, then obviously it starts getting quite a lot colder. A long gap then, very interestingly, long gap from 1901 to 1941. Next time we have a July that's close to July 2019 in terms of England and Wales precipitation is July 1941. The autumn of 1941, of course, it's in the middle of the cold run of winters that are taking place in the early 1940s. So we have a trilogy of very cold winters, 39-40, 40-41 and 41-42. Now, this pattern that we have here in the autumn of 1941, we're blocking to the north and bringing in east or northeast winds, is probably just a continuation of the Scandinavian highs and northern blocking that are very common during this early 1940s period. So this is a little bit of a deviation, I suppose, compared to a lot of the other autumns, because it's being influenced by the overall background signals, which are producing very cold winters in particular. As far as this autumn is concerned, probably dry but cold. High pressure sitting to the northeast and to the north. We're bringing in these northeasterly winds. So there's early wintry potential, obviously, in with that. And obviously setting up the pattern of what is going to be the third and final cold winter, very cold winter of 1941-1942. The next autumn is 1944. This one with above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic and below average heights sort of centred over the top of the UK. Bit of a dip in the jet stream as well. Looks quite an unsettled autumn in 1944. Probably not particularly cold. There could be some cold snaps in there, but I don't think it's a particularly cold autumn in 1944. Just rather unsettled. Next autumn is 1946. So it's interesting how we have this run from 1901 to 1942 without any Julys that are close to July 2019 in terms of England Wales precipitation. And then we get to 1940s, we get to the 1940s, and we have several. So this is 1946, the autumn of 1946, again has a blocking signal to the north of the country. Low pressure is down to the south, and we'll be bringing in easterly winds quite a bit through this autumn, probably again hinting at setting up the pattern that is going to dominate the very severely cold and snowy winter of 1946-1947. The next autumn is 1959. This one is showing up quite a lot in our analogues this year. Interestingly, this one has above average heights to the east and northeast of the country, below average heights to the west. We'll be bringing in sort of southerly, southeasterly winds with that. It's a dry and warm autumn generally. Part of a prolonged summer. The summer of 1959 is a dry and hot summer. Begins in the spring, in April and May. It's still going on in September and even into the first half of October. A lot of dry and very warm weather. 1959. Late on in October and into November, it does turn much more unsettled and rather stormy. But it's basically a continuation of the autumn pattern through most of the it's basically a continuation of the summer pattern, I should say, through most of the autumn of 1959. Generally quite a dry and warmish autumn, that one. 1961 is our next autumn. This one much more unsettled. Below average heights, low pressure just through, let's change the colour, just through the west of Europe. So lots of low pressure there. Above average heights out to the northwest and also to the northeast. Leaves us doing something a bit like that, flowing with the jet. So it's not a particularly cold autumn, but it is a very unsettled one with showers and indeed some longer spells of rain. The next autumn is 1966. Again, we have the below average heights through the north and the west of Europe. We have above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic and over towards the east of Europe again. Jet stream will be doing something a bit like that. So this is another very unsettled autumn in 1966. I've spoken about this one before. It includes, in October of 1966, the terrible Aberfan disaster where the mudslide went down onto the school at Aberfan in Wales, unfortunately killing some children. And that happens partly anyway, there were various reasons for it, but partly it's going to have a very, very wet spell during October of 1966. And 1969 turns up next, so quite a lot in the 1960s. Quite a lot of July, sort of close to July 2019 for England and Wales precipitation. This one's a much drier autumn, especially compared to 66. This one has above average heights from the Atlantic into much of Central Europe. Below average heights are up to the north. Jet stream is moved northwards as well, jet stream to the north of the country. So it's rather dry and mild autumn in 1969. Has a very warm, dry October in particular, but also September is quite dry and fairly mild too. 1970 is our next autumn. Again, this one with below average heights to our north, above average heights to the south, bringing in more of a westerly wind. It's rather a nondescript autumn in 1970, but I think it's fairly dry. There's not all that much in the way of wet weather going on that autumn. And then 1974, again following July, which with an England and Wales precipitation close to the 72.2 millimetres of July 2019. Autumn 1974 is very unsettled with a big trough of below average heights centred almost over top of the country. Very wet autumn It's the last wet season until the autumn of 1976, can you believe? So the great drought of the mid-1970s begins, actually starts around November of 1974, November and December. And it just gets more severe then as you go through 75 and into 76. The next autumn is 1987. This one is a mild but unsettled autumn. It has low pressure out to the west of the country, high pressure to the east of the country. We bring in those west-southwesterly winds. Of course, it contains the famous storm of 15th of October 1987. Generally, October 1987 was a very wet and unsettled month. Also, November 1987 was quite unsettled too, I think. Autumn 1991 is our next one. This one rather changeable, although it does have a very dry and warm September. Then it gets more unsettled. 2001 shows up next. I think this one is appearing quite a lot in our analogues. Of course, when we come to do the forecast, you're going to see which of the autumns have showed up the most during these updates, because those autumns will be the key analogues that we will partly at least base the autumn forecast upon. So you will find out when we do the autumn forecast on the 31st of August exactly which of these autumns have been showing up the most. I think 2001 has shown up quite a lot though. This autumn has above average heights over to west of the country. Jet stream is going to the north and then dipping down to the east. It's a strange autumn in that September of 2001 is quite cool and unsettled. October is exceptionally warm. I think it's still the warmest October on record. And then we get to November of 2001, which does have some colder snaps within it. So very variable autumn 2001. 2004 is our next autumn. This one, again, with above average heights just out to the west of us. Below average heights are to the east. This autumn, quite anti-cyclonic, quite a lot of dry weather. It has a warm, dry September. November 2004 is quite nondescript. October 2004 is a wetter and more unsettled month. And then we have to go through to 2005. Well, we only have to go through to 2005 for our next year. This one with above average heights, again, more towards the east of the country during the autumn 2005, tending to bring up the wind from a southwesterly direction. The interesting thing about this autumn is that it's very warm through most of it. It's a very, very warm autumn indeed in 2005. September and October 2005 are very warm months. First half of November is very mild as well, and then just like that, the second half of November turns much, much colder, and we have a real cold snap in the second half of November 2005. And then finally, the final autumn of this analogues package is 2010. So July 2010 comes out close. It's within the 20 closest Julys to July 2019 for England and Wales precipitation. And this one has, of course, the northern blocking up towards Greenland and the trough of below average heights over and to the south of the country, tending to bring the wind in from the north or easterly direction. It's a cold autumn, especially late on. So the early part of the autumn is not particularly cold. September's about average. October is a little bit cooler than average. Nothing too dramatic. It's really the second half of November though, where winter bites and we start to set up the pattern that will take over for the December to remember. That freezing cold and snowy December of 2010. Who would like another December to remember? Right, so let's bring all of that together then, and this is how all of these Septembers combined are looking when we have England and Wales precipitation close to that we have had during July 2019. And overall, it's a mild but unsettled signal for September, with below average heights tend to be out to west of the country. but a ridge of above average heights to the east and south. And so, yes, it is quite an unsettled signal here, but it's also quite a warmish signal, bringing wind up from the southwest or from the south. So a lot of mild temperatures, warm temperatures even favoured with these Septembers, but potentially also quite unsettled, particularly so for northern and western parts of the country. October tends to look like that on average. Remember, there will be years that are deviating. So, for example, we've got 1987 in this Analogues package, and that was a very stormy westerly October. But overall, Octobers combined are looking like this, with below average heights to the south of the country and above average heights tending to be more towards the northeast, and so favouring probably rather easterly conditions during these Octobers, and probably relatively dry on average. Well, that's on average, so there will be years that deviate there. But overall, rather a dry and probably fairly mildish signal for October. ECs in October are not going to be particularly cold, so mild but reasonably dry signal for October. And then November does get a little bit more interesting, because the area of above average heights in the Novembers combined tends to move more towards the North Atlantic and sort of South Greenland type area. You can see the idea that there could be a bit of a southerly tracking jet stream coming through here as well. So it looks a bit more unsettled with the Novembers, particularly compared to Octobers, but also potentially a bit colder, maybe entrenching some colder conditions on average into this trough. And so maybe just a little bit of wintry potential there in what is probably quite an unsettled signal for these Novembers, but probably favouring rather cool, maybe quite cold and unsettled conditions in the Novembers. And then finally we bring it all together, and this is the signal. So when we have all of the autumns combined, we bring all of those autumns together. This is how it looks when we follow a July England and Wales precipitation close to July 2019. We tend to get below average heights to our south. We tend to get above average heights both to the west and also to the east. It's not true northern block, because it's not extending right way back up to central parts of Greenland and up into the Arctic. So not true northern blocking. But it is sort of high pressure to the north generally, be that the northeast or the northwest, and low pressure to the south. So quite interesting package of analogues this. A lot of variation from month to month. September favouring warmer but wetter conditions. October favouring probably mild but dry conditions, and then colder and wetter perhaps favoured for the Novembers. And then that's how we come out with the overall package. But bear in mind, there's intra-month variation going along there. And that is it. That is the end of the 9th and final Autumn 2019 Analogues update from GWV.com. So we have reached the end of the autumn updates. We can do no more as far as the autumn analogues are concerned. We do still have one more autumn seasonal model roundup to go, where we're going to get all of the long range models together and see what they're all showing. We're going to do that on Saturday, this coming Saturday. I think that's 24th of August. And once that's out of the way, that will be it then for all of the autumn updates. It'll be a case of bringing the analogues together with the long-range models. Analogues guru James Ackwell will do his marvellous work. We'll bring all of those analogues together for you. And on Saturday, the 31st of August, we're going to release even the GWV.com Autumn 2019 forecast. And it's a real mixed bag at the moment. I am struggling a little bit with what I'm going to go with for this autumn, actually. Still not really got a good idea of what we're doing. I'm waiting to see what the analogue show, and also that all-important season we're around. I have sort of got a few ideas at the back of the mind, but I have struggled a little bit with these autumn updates this year. There hasn't been a consistent theme, I don't think, running along. Well, maybe you disagree. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think we had a consistent theme out of these autumn analogues this year? Or do you think it's been generally quite a mixed bag? I think the early ones did favour rather colder autumn conditions maybe, and then as we've gone along we perhaps favour warmer autumn conditions. But that's just my sort of judgment about it. Got nothing to back that up because I haven't seen any of the data yet, but James is going to get for us when we bring the analogues together. So we shall see about that. But anyway, the autumn forecast will be released on 31st of August. One more season one round up to do. That's the end, though, of the autumn analogues updates. Next Sunday, it's Solar Sunday. So we are going to be able to bring you that Solar Sunday, but we had to cancel at the beginning of the month. So that's going to be up next Sunday. And I think that one will be quite a tease, really, to get you ready for the winter update. So the beginning 2 weeks today, only 2 weeks today, before we begin the winter 2019-2020 updates. So interesting times ahead. Later on today, we're going to have the penultimate Gals Weather's Sunday Roundup, and then this afternoon, or later this afternoon, I suppose I should say, we'll have the E&W Metro France and DWD seasonal model update. This 9th and final autumn 2019 analogues update will be placed on the autumn updates and forecast page with a written summary. I'll get that up for you this evening. But at 25 minutes, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.